Thanks very much to the QQI and also AHEAD for inviting us along. I'd also like to thank NTutor, who have funded this project as part of this. The NTutor project is funded through the HEA.
Move into the middle.
Oh, sorry. And as part of that project, they're talking, so this is the light, so shining. As part of that project, they talk about student empowerment and about working in partnership, about transformational learning. And as part of the project, they funded a number of students to become student champions in relation to themes that were identified through the project. And these included EDI, UDL, and academic integrity and employability. Is that right? And Robert, who's one of our student champions, and myself are going to take you through this presentation, and this is what we're actually going to cover in the presentation. Sorry. So who was actually involved? And this is a sample of some of the people that were involved. It wasn't just the student champions, but it was the student union and staff from across all three campuses in TU Dublin. I think we've clearly identified that there are a number of issues with the current assessments that we use in higher education at the moment. We seek to use assessments for different purposes, and quite often just really doesn't meet the specific purposes. Particularly traditional assessments, such as exams and essays, are very limited in what they actually evidence. And in many cases, the assessment would actually put in place barriers. And again, we've heard very eloquently about some of the barriers here today. We really realise that assessment is actually a shared responsibility between both staff and students, and we wanted to make sure that we had supports and projects in place where we would actually involve students and staff working together to really epitomise the whole concept of working in partnership with students. So it was initially staff-led, but we incrementally encouraged the students to get more involved through partnership projects. As you probably have read or are aware, working with students in partnership in practice raises various challenges, particularly around about assessment practice, because there's a kind of dynamic there, a power kind of imbalance between both staff and students. It also it's been really connected with assessment. So we're actually looking at some way in which we could do this in a positive and constructive way. We're currently working to develop a resource which is an assessment handbook. And so we wanted something that would be a project that would be inspiring to our students to get involved in, but would be definitely student-led. I think one of the other issues around about supporting students around about assessment is the fact that sometimes they're coming in with maybe an unfamiliarity around about some of the language that we use in assessment. So there's a challenge in actually getting, I suppose, them familiar and having conversations and have a shared understanding around about assessment. So this time last year, we were very concerned around academic integrity and AI and how that would impact on our assessment practices. So one of the first tasks that we did was to get our student team, put out a proposal to the student champions to get involved, and we put out a call to come and work with us to develop a resource around academic integrity. And they gave a very eloquent presentation as part of an event that we were organising around about rethinking assessment. In fact, it was really empowering, I think, both for the students, but it also clearly informed the staff that were attending on that particular event as well. We then looked at ways in which we could actually get a project that would be meaningful for both staff and students. And I was actually looking around and came across a compendium of resources was developed through Leeds University as part of a research project. And I thought this would actually work if we asked our students what their particular perception was around about assessment methods that were currently used in TU Dublin. And ones that we actually hope that they would actually use, I think, into the future. But we wanted to put a twist on it. So utilising the expertise that the students were bringing to that around about UDL, EDI, academic integrity and employability, we asked them to consider the impact that this would have on the different assessment methods that they chose. And Rob is going to take us through that particular part of the project. And the final piece, as a result of having worked through the process with the students who are directing how this was rolled out, was a lot of meaningful learning, I think, for both the staff that were involved, but also for the students. And we felt that this should be shared. So we had a showcase event, which was around focusing on assessment again at the beginning of this year, and we asked the students to present their research and their findings, having undertaken this project, and to report this back as part of a panel process.
Yeah. Thank you. There we go. It's here. It's a compendium of assessment methods from student perspectives. There is the teaching perspective in there as well, but this does focus on the student perspective, and it is people. We had to go around talking to people to see what their opinions were. It's not just. I wrote the part on the traditional examinations, and I couldn't just go and just say it's bad. I had to find the positives, I had to find the negatives. I had to find the positives and negatives from a teaching perspective. So this was all focused around the student voice, and we had a star rating system. So there was 4 areas we were rating them on, so universal design for learning, academic integrity, employability, and EDI. And for each assessment method, you rated it between 1 to 5 stars. So 1 being the worst and 5 being the best. And that was done for every assessment method that TU Dublin uses. So I colloquially call this the hot or not of assessments within TU Dublin. There's a focus on the accessibility and the EDI aspects of our assessment methods. So, there we go. This is it here. It's much easier to see up here, but isn't it really pretty? It's really pretty. This is the NTutor project. That's their branding, and it's really pretty. But the overview is that it has a little introduction, explains what the rating system is and why we're doing it, and then it has a double page for each assessment method, and it's all contained within that. It explains what the assessment method is. Then it has the positive and negatives from the teaching perspective, and then a positive and negative from the student perspective, and then it's rated on the star system. And then at the end, there's a little bit for students about assessments, and a guide to completing assessments. So there's one don't panic, and it's really nice, and I would recommend you all read it. It's on the TU Dublin website. The short recommendations, so to balance summative and formative assessments, explore alternative assessment methods. I feel like I'm kind of preaching to the choir here. Ensure alignment with learning outcomes and provide variety in assessments. I especially like the variety and the choice aspects, because you're not going to get a course that is in a universal design philosophy if you don't have that flexibility. Because I actually did a podcast. One of the previous speakers was talking about podcasts. I actually did a podcast as a part of one of my modules. But a podcast doesn't work if you are a sign language user. So you need to build those flexibilities in, because the current model of reasonable accommodations is failing disabled students, because it just puts it out there that disabled students weren't considered in the first place, and you're going to have to adapt your program to fit them. So prepare students for assessments. I do a lot of lab reports. If you give me a sample lab report, I'll give you the best lab report you'll ever read. But if you don't tell me what I'm meant to be doing, how am I meant to do it? Am I meant to read your mind? Because it'd be like that. Some lab reports are completely different to other lab reports. Different modules within the same course have completely different lab report formats and structures. So you need to prepare students for these assessments. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to give you what you want. And avoid assessment deadline clustering. A lot of these are kind of common sense at this point. Use staged assessment for coursework. Include ongoing formative feedback. Maintain assessment transparency. Make the rubrics really easy to access. And make the rubrics really easy to understand. Because sometimes a rubric can be written in language, in really strict academic language, that doesn't make it apparent what you're actually rating people on. Enhance feedback engagement, and advise students on the feedback utilization. Yeah, you can give students feedback, but if you don't tell them how to use that feedback, then you might as well not give them any feedback. A lot of students struggle to find how that feedback fits into their work. And you can't really, there's no point in giving feedback if the feedback can't be utilized. And especially give feedback in a timely manner. I've had modules where I got the feedback after all of the assignments were submitted. And that's not helpful. How am I meant to show improvement? How am I meant to show that development if you're not giving me the chance? I will bring it to you, Jen, to talk about the impact.
Very powerful to actually hear the student voice. So what do we learn in terms of the project? The importance of the project. I think as well, it was about trusting our students to engage in the project, which was really, really important. They took the lead in a lot of the aspects around about the structure of the compendium and the sections that they wanted included into that. They were the ones that were putting forward the recommendations at the end. I think staff had commented that it was all the richer because all the methods were researched and put forward by the students rather than members of staff. So it's become a useful resource. And I think it built capacity round about our assessment practice within the institution to enhance the other work that we're doing round about assessment in a very positive way. But I think, if nothing else, to me, it demonstrated how effective staff and students working in partnership can actually be if you actually do that truly. So thank you very much for that. Thank you.